Namaskar and welcome to Sansad Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching our show Perspective, where we bring you detailed analysis of key national and international issues. Today we're going to talk about the India-Maldives relationship. Now, Republic of Maldives President Ibrahim Mohamed Solih is on an official visit to India from 1st to 4th of August. India-Maldives relations have been close, cordial and multidimensional. India was among the first to recognize Maldives after its independence in 1965 and also to establish diplomatic relations with the country. Maldives is India's key neighbor in the Indian Ocean region and occupies a special place in India's neighborhood first policy. In recent years, the partnership between both these countries have witnessed rapid growth in all areas of cooperation. So what are the key focus areas during this wide-ranging partnership and during this particular visit, which will be discussed between both sides? And what more is on the horizon in this particular relationship? We will discuss and analyze all aspects in today's episode of Perspective. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of experts. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with Pramit Chaudhuri is joining us, former Foreign Affairs Editor, Hindustan Times. We also have with us Dr. Shriram Cholia, Foreign Affairs expert, and Dr. Mohan Kumar, former investor, is also joining us. Pramit, I'll begin with you. Let's start by taking stock of what we are looking at, how crucial and important this visit is going to be.
As you know, as you mentioned, the Maldives is strategically extraordinarily important for India. I've forgotten it's over 1,000 islands, the archipelago, and its because of those islands, it covers almost the entire north-central Indian Ocean is its territorial waters. So it's one of the key reasons that we have seen, notably China, try to increase its influence dramatically in the Maldives over the past decade. As you know, in the previous Maldivian government of Abdullah Yameen was openly very hostile and he remains as opposition leader very hostile to India, and had allowed China to make some remarkable inroads into the Maldives, all to the detriment of India. He had also, this is Yameen, allowed the Chinese to build for example, a couple of major infrastructure projects. One of them, which was canceled by President Solih when he came to power and retendered, and it was discovered that the Chinese were overcharging the Maldivians over 300%. In other words, a $1.2 billion project when globally tendered cost only $400 billion. And so very clearly was trying to drive the Maldivians into a debt trap with the Chinese, and probably pocketing quite a bit of the money himself. Okay. So President Solih is in many ways, he was able to overthrow, he won on an election, democratic election, put himself in power, and has course corrected the relationship now when it comes to India. But the Maldives goes for elections next year. And unfortunately, the Maldivian Democratic Party, which Solih heads, is internally divided between Nasheed, the other leader within the Democratic Party, and himself. Mm-hmm. But we are also giving, we will announce formally, a $500 million infrastructure project, which will connect Malé to the capital to three other islands. And we had clear sign that India will provide the kind of infrastructure that China used to claim only it could do, but at an affordable price, and hopefully buttress Solih's position domestically.
Okay. Let me bring in, Ambassador Mohan Kumar here. Dr. Kumar, it would be really interesting and important to understand the historical perspective of this relationship as well, from 65 onwards, but significantly, there were landmark situations in between in 98 and then in the 21st century as well. So if you could sum up for us, what are the key or specific areas or periods when this relationship withstood the test of times, and it ultimately became clear that India stands for Maldives?
So I would say you would have to go back to the pre-coup period. This was 98 when ex-Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, the late Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, decided to intervene in Maldives. That was an important moment, I thought. I was in the BSM division as a young officer at the time, and it was a very crucial decision for India to take, especially since it was after the intervention in Sri Lanka. So that was an important moment when India decided they will not allow an illegal overthrow of a democratically elected leader in the neighborhood. So I would say the pre-period, the post-period, and then as my colleague and co-panelist Pramit rightly points out, the recent uptick in the relationship is only from 2018, when President Solih was elected, because the period before that, there's quite a bit of a tug of war with China and India both jostling, and politicians in Maldives openly siding with China. I think it is President Solih's policy of India first, which can then be married with India's neighborhood first. So that is the happy situation we find ourselves in. And I would like to say that the last 4 years is the most critical period, because I was just doing a back of the envelope calculation, and we are looking at $2 billion at least the last 4 years. Just the Malay connectivity project is $500 billion. $800 million line of credit was signed 3 years ago. So we are doing a lot of things in connectivity and infrastructure. We had the first joint exercise, Ekata, between India and Maldives in the Indian Ocean, a white shipping agreement which will give us maritime domain awareness on a real-time basis. So I would say, whichever way you want me to talk about the Maldives relationship, and if you want to divide it, as I said, you can go back to the pre-coup, the post-coup.
Okay.
It is the last 4 years that has seen a massive intensification of the relationship with significant financial infusion from India.
Okay. Dr. Chaudhuri, would you agree there, to this aspect that whichever way you look at this particular relationship, of course, it has strong roots in the past when India had come to the aid of Maldives quite a number of times, but the last few years has seen a lot of momentum here.
Tremendous momentum, Vishal. In fact, Prime Minister Modi made it a point to make Maldives his first the foreign destination after re-election in 2019. Before that, Ibrahim Solih, after winning his historic victory in 2018, was again made India his first destination. So yeah, I think the move towards reclaiming the democratic space in Maldives, which started in 2018, has enabled India to claw itself back in. And definitely the Chinese model was more with the authoritarian partners in Maldives, who have now been defeated, and hopefully, they're still in the opposition and they could make a comeback. In Maldives, the politics is always multi-pronged. There are like 4 or 5 factions, and if 1 or 2 factions shifts allegiances at the last moment, anybody can win. So there are elections, as Pramit is mentioning. So I think definitely it is in our best interest to ensure that the democratic process continues, and that hardline, abusive and even Islamist and extremist type of politicians don't come back to power. So I think President Solih, as we recognize his importance, and of course, Maldivian people have to make their choice. But President Solih has a vision for Maldives' socio-economic development, and India is very keen to enable that vision to come to fruition. Okay. And we have channels with all sides, but we want this process to continue forward. And there is also the broader Indian Ocean strategy of India.
Indeed. Like we will come to that, Dr. Chaudhuri. We'll come to that. In fact, hold your thoughts there, because I'm now, bringing in Pramit here. Pramit, you're also earlier referring to what exactly is on the agenda in this particular visit. And as Dr. Chaudhuri also referred to, Dr. Mohan Kumar was also pointing it out, that Maldives is looking for a, overall uptick in the socio-economic development aspect of its citizens and the country as a whole, wherein it needs India's help. But strategically speaking, as Dr. Chaudhuri was referring to, how crucial and important is Maldives for India?
So India's overall Indian Ocean policy is that in the area that we really see as sort of strategically our backyard, if you wish, we would like to be the preeminent player in the region. And this means not so much as dominance, but that all the major countries or the players in this area should look to India as their primary strategic partner and consult with India on any major decisions they make. They can make a decision on their own, and that's completely up to them. But they should try and bring us into the picture and at least consult with us. Recently, we have now seen, of course, that China has come in and basically tried to position itself as the alternative to India. Not so much militarily, because it's still a little far away, but it's working its way in that direction, given it now has two major bases, if you wish, or ports in the Indian Ocean, and is now seeking a third one. But the bigger concern for India has been its attempt to use its money power to either buy or to indebt countries, smaller countries in the Indian Ocean region. We saw what's happened in Sri Lanka. We know they attempted the same thing, as I mentioned, in the Maldives. They've tried to do these carrots in places like Seychelles. And so obviously this is a major concern for India. If China is able to entrench itself into one of these countries next door to India, if you wish, it will mean India's ability to secure what effectively are its primary maritime supply chains, whether on trade and so on in the Indian Ocean, and especially in the region right around India, would be severely compromised. We can happily assume that China will not be friendly or even neutral to us on the maritime side.
Okay. Mr. Kumar, your views there on the strategic importance part, because as Pramit is pointing out, this seems to be a very, very significant area for India, and the Maldives location in Indian Ocean region does attach a lot more significance to this relationship.
Absolutely. I think the Indian Ocean region, especially comprising Sri Lanka and Maldives, is of great significance. I would draw attention to the Colombo Security Conclave that the National Security Advisors of India, Sri Lanka, Maldives, they participate frequently. I think what we have done in the area of defense is to try and strengthen maritime defense forces in Maldives. The first thing I would say is that 70% of their training requirements of the Maldivian Defense Force is met by India. So it's not just about giving equipment. We train Maldivian Defense Forces 70%. Second, the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, visited Maldives in February 2022, and he was able to give them a coastal radar system, which is used by Maldives now to really provide surveillance in their coastal area. And as I said earlier, there has been a white shipping agreement for maritime domain awareness, real-time information, and we've had a first joint maritime exercise called Ekata. Now, all this is to give you a sense of how important those territorial waters are for India. And as my co-panelist said, a lot of the trade routes, we are actually talking about keeping the sea lanes of communication open and to make sure that there is no impediment to it. So I think the defense aspect of this relationship is important. At the same time, what we are trying to do is also invest in the social sectors in Maldives. The National Skills Development Corporation had sent a delegation 3 months ago. We are trying to see how we can make investments in Maldives, whether it is defense or social, which will be independent of who is the president, if I can put it bluntly. That is the challenge for India, because right now we have a president who's well disposed to India, but tomorrow it may not be the case. And I frankly think Indian foreign policy should be ready for this. And we can be ready only if our aid and our assistance is irreversible, if you know what I mean.
Indeed.
Most of the things that we are doing are irreversible. And I think that will keep us in good stead. So we have to take a somewhat medium to long-term view of things in Maldives. And I believe we are beginning to do that.
Okay. Dr. Chaudhuri, your views there on this aspect, as both Pramit and Mr. Kumar are referring to it, a lot of importance attached to this relationship because strategically speaking, it is very, very significant for India.
Yes, Vishal. In fact, when Prime Minister visited the Maldivian Parliament in 2019, I recall his famous speech where he said that, neighbors, among all the neighbors, Maldives has primacy for us. And he also spoke about how we must respect each other's sensitivities. And what he meant by that was, and he also warned against taking on debt that will lead to a neo-colonial control of the Maldives. So it was very clear that we do sense a major challenge from China, and we now have a full-fledged regional strategy to push back against that challenge. And Maldives is a central pillar of that. Mauritius is one, Maldives is one, Seychelles, and east coast of all the way up to east coast of Africa. And on the other side, of course, we have the Act East policy. So these are all in many ways now merged into one large Indo-Pacific policy. And that's where I think we are trying to make sure that all these dots are being connected. So if you look at connectivity, this is a big thing we have done. We now have a cargo ferry service from Thoothukudi in Tamil Nadu to Cochin in Kerala, and from there to Malé, all the way to Malé. 700 kilometers across the Indian Ocean. India is now connected. And people are hoping that we can also have tourist traffic. And by the way, India has really risen up to the occasion during the COVID-19 pandemic. And that has won the hearts and minds of Maldivian people. Ambassador Mohan Kumar was saying that, ultimately India's goodwill lies in the people of Maldives, not so much in this party or this politician or that faction. And there, we were number 4 or number 5 in tourism revenues and in arrivals in the Maldives before the pandemic, and now we became number 1. So, and President Solih himself has acknowledged that India was like the lifeline, the kind of money that our tourists were spending there, because almost 30% of the economy is based on tourism there. And then, there is fisheries, and to a lesser extent, agriculture, seafood processing. In all these areas, India is helping because we know that that is the lifeline for the country. And they've been, very, very open to this. There are anti-India elements, and we're trying to, challenge them and push back against them using subtle means. For example, there was an attack on or an attempted attack on our Yoga Day celebration in Maldives recently, being organized by some radical Islamist elements claiming that yoga is against Islamic values and all those things. So we want moderate Islam also. And that's been one of the major consideration. Ambassador Mohan Kumar was mentioning about counterterrorism and the National Security Advisor level dialogue. We are very keen that Maldives doesn't become a hub for ISIS type of terrorism, and that is linked to extremism in Sri Lanka and in southern India. Okay. So you have to see this whole region together. Maldives is very critical. It's a Muslim majority country, moderate country. We want it to remain on that path, and that's our larger objective. Okay. Apart from countering the Chinese. Okay.
So strategy and security is, of course, a very important, a paradigm of this relationship. But Ambassador Kumar, looking at all those aspects which earlier Pramit was referring to in his first response, and now Dr. Chaudhuri was also pointing out in terms of the cooperation in various sectors between both the countries, what Maldives is looking forward to. And with this particular visit, how do you see things are going to pan out?
So this visit is going to do a couple of things, in my view. One is that it is the first incoming visit of the newly elected president of India. So President Murmu gets her first international visitor, which is the president of Maldives. And it's always, Maldives believes that they should be in touch with all the leaders, the full spectrum of the Indian leaders. So that's the first. The second, frankly, I see this as taking stock by the two leaders, because a lot of money was announced, whether it is the line of credit for $800 million, $500 billion, as I said, for the Malay Greater Connectivity Project. The famous hospital, Rajiv Gandhi Hospital, is being renovated by us because that was done about 25 years ago. All these projects, we are trying to make sure they don't slip. Because to be absolutely honest with you, one of the criticism leveled against India in the past by neighboring countries is that we take a little bit longer in executing projects compared to the Chinese. So we don't want that to happen in Maldives. And so this will be an excellent opportunity to take stock. Third, the bilateral trade has reached $300 million. Now, that may be a small sum for India, but it is an important sum for a small country like Maldives. And we would like to make sure that we do everything possible to ensure Maldives is integrated with the Indian economy. And I dare say we have made some mistakes in the past, 20 years ago, with regard to Bangladesh. We don't want the same thing to be done with Maldives. We must fully integrate the Maldivian economy. Professor Chaulia was absolutely spot on. We have now the #1 tourists in Maldives. The entire Bollywood seems to be going there every week, frankly. So, but that is very, very important revenue. We have given them 200,000 vaccines, Covishield, which help the population inoculate themselves as quickly as possible. So we've done a lot, Vishal, frankly.
Indeed.
This country, I would say Afghanistan, then Sri Lanka in the last 3-4 months and Maldives in the last 3 years. Nobody can really now say that India's neighborhood policy is long on rhetoric and short on substance. If you actually do a calculation, valuable resources have now been poured into Sri Lanka, Maldives, and earlier Bangladesh.
Okay.
So you'll have to see it in that context. It is, of course, India's interest, strategic interest, but we don't want to move away from investment in infrastructure, people, which, as I said, must be considered irreversible, because we must be prepared that there could be a change of government, etc. We want our assistance to be seen as being in favor of Maldives and its people. Not in favor of one president or the other.
Okay,
okay. Understanding.
Pramit, quick concluding comments from you on this aspect. You know, it's just not that Maldives should be viewing India as a net security provider only. It's also about India extending help in giving a push to the economy, or rather upgrading the lifestyle of its citizens, both in social and economic terms.
Absolutely correct. As Ambassador Kumar mentioned, we have an extensive aid program now. If I'm correct, we have at least 45 separate projects. The bridge connectivity one that I mentioned earlier is just one of them. And the rest stretch everything from fisheries to tourism development to education to public health and so on. So it's a very clear and whole of government approach of trying to make it clear to the Maldivians that they should see India as their primary external beneficiary and friend. But there are other areas the Maldivians are very concerned about. They are a country as a small island with a relatively low elevation. They are one of the countries that are most concerned about climate change.
Climate change, yes.
And this is an area India has been at the forefront internationally. Maldives is too small a country to be able to influence developments on the international climate change policy front, but we are, and it's again something that we've been trying very hard to make it clear to the Maldivians that we are their champion in things like the COP and other international areas. So whether it's a small island initiatives in climate change conferences and so on. He has made sure that we are one of the loudest voices and have pushed very hard for finance to be provided to such small islands.
Okay, okay. So there it is. Thank you so much, Pramit, Dr. Cholia, as well as Ambassador Dr. Mohan Kumar for sharing your views and insight. As our experts were pointing out various aspects of India-Maldives relation, of course, steeped in history and having withstood the test of times as well. But with changing times, the needs are changing as well. And Maldives, of course, is looking up to India for support on various aspects, socio-economic development, climate change being one of them, and of course, being the net security provider. And equally, Maldives is of very significant strategic importance for India. We'll come back again with all the details on this visit and other major issues as well. Till then, keep watching Sansad Television. Thank you.